This is Robert Mardlacci, the Mindshare Learning Port Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine. And welcome to This Week in Canadian EdTech, CanAm edition. I'm honored to have join me for Mindshare Learning Moment, Buzzwood of the Buzz on Education. We're experimenting with StreamYard. And Buzz, thank you for joining me all the way from Florida.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is part two, right, for us, right?
This is part two. We're live. And what do you think of this new technology that we love to experiment? That's part of our segment on this particular show, the CanAm EdTech edition.
Yeah. Well, I think you're making a great point, is that if we don't begin to trial some of these things and give them a go, you'll never know. And everything's a little bit different for everybody these days. So it's a big sandbox. So let's play. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. So being the CanAm edition, so I'm in Canada. I'm in the Toronto area. You're based in?
Yeah, I'm down near Jacksonville, Florida. So I'm in Northeast Florida.
So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the Buzz on Education, what inspired it, the cool technology you use, and then we'll talk about what Mindshare does.
Sure. Yeah, the Buzz on Education was started about 2 years ago now, but was many years in the making. I think just like you, when you've been around enough educators and enough education institutions and education leadership, you get kind of a broad scope of things, and you want to share those things and not just, covet them and to some benefit for teachers and as it relates to students. And for me, I had this high technical acumen and decided to use that along with some of the observations that I make that I think are winning observations in the classroom, so all real world stuff, and wanted to bring that into the public forum. And so since we're in this great digital age of sharing and being able to do what we're doing right now, streaming live, it's a great ability to reach a lot of people at one time with a lot of messages that they need to hear, or a lot of techniques or tips and tricks and things like that. And so that's what the Buzz in Education covers, all that. We look at trends, we look at what are the best products, how are they being used, and just some kind of mentality trends of what's happening for mindset out there, and which is particularly important. So just out there sharing all that knowledge and helping people, and that's kind of really what it is for our education colleagues.
Very cool. Now, well, you've got quite an immense background. I almost want to call you a legend in EdTech, and having worked for Steve Jobs, and you've been instrumental in helping me with refining my video and audio, coming in pretty clear, I hope, to you right now.
Yeah. You're doing great.
Yeah.
You're so the best at it. So I would.
Well, during this COVID teaching time, I like to call it, as we released our top 10 this morning. It's never been a more pivotal, transformational time to be in education. It's been a great opportunity to experiment with new technology. Would you have imagined in your lifetime to be able to say that you have a 100% adoption by teachers in using some form of technology?
I mean, I don't think that ever really happens, but I think we're seeing it.
We are seeing it, and I was speaking with our chief learning officer, digital learning officer earlier, who was a STEM teacher in the TDSB, and he referenced forced adoption, and necessity is the mother of invention. And what would we do today to extend the learning at home without Zoom, without Teams, or Google Classroom, or what have you? Of course, my Google phone lights up as I mention Google, so they're now listening. So let's be respectful to Google. But thankfully, people are discovering tools that they didn't know they had the ability to integrate and learn. And it really speaks to the growth mindset and the notion of lifelong learning.
Definitely. And I think that you make a great point about, I think just out of habit, human beings mostly do out of necessity. It's rare that a lot of people get ahead of it or really embrace it when it's an unknown. We get forced into learning things, and it just gets to be the human condition. And education has run, on its own legs for so long. This opportunity, and that's really what I think of it as, is an ability for people to get the list out of the things that they've always said under their breath about. I wish this could be fixed. I wish this was better. I wish they'd improve on this. This is the time where all ideas matter most, and are welcomed. So dust off those notes if you happen to have them, or you got them in the back of your head, because what might seem like a complaint a while ago is now one of the better ideas that people are starting to pay attention to. So every voice matters, I think.
Absolutely. And the notion of storytelling matters as well. What was interesting, one of our top 10 items we posted was the CIO from Coquitlam, Stephen Whiffen, Director of Instruction and CIO, did a webinar last week. And what he talked about was the vision, of course, is phenomenal. They're so ahead of the game, BYOD, and when they pivoted over to remote learning, it was a pretty smooth transition because they've been doing blended learning. And what Stephen talked about was they love to share what they're doing with other districts, with other states, provinces, countries, and the learning that occurs from that is their motivation to stay at the forefront of innovation. You need to share and you need to learn. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really true. In fact, I'm having a similar, almost parallel conversation this afternoon with a career tech education instructor in one of the districts here in Florida, and we were really talking about that the new toolkit going forward for business people and educators alike is the ability to have, like we just started off with talking about, having a good webcam or a good video capability, good audio capability, because you could have the best ideas and you could have really meaningful messages to tell people, and if they can't hear you clearly or see you clearly, it sometimes will, hijack the whole message, and it doesn't translate well. And sometimes if you're talking to larger groups, they'll just drop out of the webinar, drop out of the conference, and you don't want those kinds of barriers. So I think, when you look at the toolbox, it used to be, did you know word processing and other computational skills, and did you know how to do certain things? And for people in business, they always want to know, did you know PowerPoint, Excel, Word, and those kinds of things. I think in the new toolbox is that, do you know how to stream yourself? Do you know how to have the right tools, like we're saying, microphones and cameras to do?
Right.
And that those are just going to be stock things. It won't be novelties like, oh, wow, that's a really great camera. I wish I had one. Or what is that? People won't even be asking that. It'll be ubiquitous that everyone's got this type of technology, and probably in very short order. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, you got to have it.
Absolutely. This is the new literacy, isn't it? And, without having those skills, you will not be prepared going into high school, university, or college. One of the students, just to contrast, when we were in school versus today, last year I had a co-op student who was going to business school after graduating grade 12. And I said to Husna, you have the skills for me to hire you today to be my digital media associate. She knew Adobe, Premiere, Inside Out, Dreamweaver, you name it. She knew all the Adobe tools. She was very personable, strong communication skills, just very refined in grade 12. Imagine where this person will be upon graduating from university.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? Light years ahead. And, just like, we
We might have lost Robert. Robert, are you with us still? Robert, I think you have to put a quarter in the machine, and or maybe not. Maybe it's $1 now. I don't know. Well, I think he was making a great point about, the way people learn. I think that another point might be worth making would be around the idea that you will become much more proficient as you use it more, which is another cool thing to think about, because in it, the more you use it, the better you get at it. So I think today, what's a challenge will tomorrow be second nature to you. So if you're new with microphones or new with cameras, in getting them to have the proper sound that you want and the things you want to do with it, I think they'll become, again, very second nature as the more you use them. And it's important to think about that, because these are going to be the tools by which we reach people, instruct people, and just generally communicate in many ways. So learning them will not go to waste. That's for sure. I think Robert is completely. I think some of the statements I've made are pretty fantastic, but I don't know if they're worth fainting. I think you might have fainted on the last one I said, because I mean, a lot of people go, "Wow, that's really deep, man." Then they fall over, and it's just happened again. So I'm going to try to refrain from big statements that just wow people. I know I don't know, what can I say? But there he is.
I'm back.
I just was telling the audience, I think you fainted because one of my statements were so profound that it has this effect on people. And
You're killing me. Hey, listen, thank you for, carrying the show for a couple minutes there. Technology is great when it works. So
I know what you're doing. You're working from home and you're making dinner. I get it.
No, not quite. I had a nap. How's that? But listen, you've had some great learning moments.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can share the learning moment with Steve Jobs. A notable name. You were with Apple at the time at a conference, and you had a Q&A, and you, being the keener, put up your hand and you share the rest of the story.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it was 2002, I think it was. And I was working for Apple, and very large crowd, and Steve came to greet us. It was all the educational constituents for the company. And so he had a Q&A session, as you mentioned. And so part of it was that you'd walk up to a microphone that wasn't too far from an abbreviated stage, and he was up there, and his staff were flanking him on either side of the stage. And so I went up and I said, "Hi, this is Buzzwood from Florida." And Steve was not the kind of guy that wanted to mess around too much, and didn't tolerate too much humor, particularly with a large crowd. And so he looked off to his people and says, "If this guy's messing with me, I'm going to fire him right now." Because at the time, Steve owned Pixar, and Toy Story 2 had come out shortly around then, I think it was, and or at least Toy Story 1 had. And Buzz and Woody were the central characters, as everyone he knows. And he thought I was playing with those two names of his beloved lead characters in the animation that his wonderful studio Pixar had created. So I told him no. I was waiting for him to ask me, but the people on the side, his handlers, said, "No, it's him." And so he asked me what my question was, which at that point became totally lost in the moment. But that was it. That was my only real brush with Steve. And I don't know if he'd ever would have remembered that when he was with us, but definitely an exciting time at Apple, and good days I'll never forget. So, and again, Robert has just, he had a nap, so it's got to be. I bet he's Italian, as you know, Martellacci, right? So I'm sure he's making some kind of wonderful Italian dream meal. And as we're all homebound now, so it's not unusual that you're answering questions from your kids, trying to answer the front door, or getting a delivery, those kinds of things. So
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing
Yeah, that's awesome. I just said you were at the door getting an Amazon delivery.
I'm referring to the Steve Jobs story. Thank you so much. I'm like, where the heck? This is fascinating, first of all, to be on this new tool,
Yeah.
but I couldn't get back in. So I checked out YouTube, and there you were telling the Steve Jobs story. So, this is the power of technology and really harnessing for learning and for kids to, and this is currently a free tool upgrade is available as well. But I'll definitely, I don't know, what do you think of it so far?
I like it so far. I think that probably next week we should do CanAm 3, and we'll flip it. I'll be the host, and then
Right.
you can be my guest, and we'll
Yeah.
expose more people to it. But I think this is, again, seriously something that you and I do with a lot of, we're jump off the cliff kind of guys without a cape or a parachute, and
Right.
knowing that we're going to land on our feet somehow. And I think that is good because we want to tell people, you too can do this. Try StreamYard out.
Yeah.
Another tool that I have is one called Buzzsprout, which has nothing to do with me, but Buzzsprout is a podcasting platform. And if you've never podcasted before, you should try these guys out. If you're an educator, it's free through this entire crisis that we're in. I don't know there's a specific end yet to it, but it is really a terrific way to cut your teeth on podcasting. And then our friends at Soundtrap, which Robert featured in one of
Right.
great interviews, their product is now free to try as a podcasting producing platform. So just go check those things out. Soundtrap and Buzzsprout, and those are great things. And then we're trying StreamYard out.
Yeah, very cool. So question on Buzzsprout, is that the distribution one that simultaneously will distribute your podcast throughout all the platforms?
Yeah, they're the host. And then what
Right.
you do is they provide a painless way to get out onto Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, you name it, and all at one fell swoop. So when you
But
post
you
it at
have
the
to,
site,
so could I upload a video as well, or is it just audio?
it's just audio. It's just a podcast.
Okay.
And just
I-
so people understand is
Yeah.
that Robert and I believe in both mediums because in some cases, and I like to talk about educators and kids, is that sometimes if you communicate with just audio, kids it's more transportable. Whereas video, if you're on a skateboard, a bicycle, driving a car, you don't want people using video. And then usually if you're outdoors or you have a lot of light, it washes out the screen. So audio is starting to become like a big deal because people can listen to that anywhere, anytime, and without putting themselves at risk or anything like that. So it has a lot of attributes that can't get overlooked. So that's a good one.
Well, with that, Buzz, thank you so much for your time this afternoon for our CanAm report.
Robert Martellacci, the mayor of Canada, if there is such a thing, a wonderfully connected
Well,
guy.
you inspire me to perhaps one day run in semi-retirement, but my wife won't let me right now. She's city clerk, so it's like conflict of interest. That was Buzzwood, the founder of the Buzz on Education. My name is Robert Martellacci, the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindsharelearning.com to get your latest issue. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.